Hello and welcome back to Crafty Magic Arts! Today we'll be making something truly magical just in time for the season. Because it has the perfect body type, I'll be working with this little Sunnydaze. It is an older pony in good condition, but it is rock hard and really easy to break because it is brittle. Now moving on to the next steps, I do have to remove the tail and the mane. The easiest way to remove both of them is to remove the head and then go through each hole accordingly and pull out the pieces. Now that does sound terrifying when you say it that way. Now once everything's nice and clean, I can start working on the next pieces. Getting it clean is the problem. As you saw at the beginning, I'm planning on making Santa Claus, so I want to make sure I draw out kind of how I want things to look. A very loose sketch, but it works. Now I need to actually get working. One thing I need to do is actually need to cut the pony in half. I want to keep that reference in frame. I'll tell you one thing, customizing ponies is a horror show all on its own. You have to cut the pony in half, you gotta do all the things and the stuff, and you get some pretty interesting shots. Moving on to what I'm actually doing here, I'm actually pulling the pony apart and then using a dowel to keep it separated. The legs where the front were coming together, so I am using this other thicker dowel to help coerce it in the right space, and then also using the heat gun to make it more permanent. It is now set in place, but the dowel has to be glued, and then I need to add rocks to add additional weight to the feet. This just helps with the other weight that I'll be adding so he doesn't get all top heavy. Hot glue holds the rocks in place, and then I move on to the head. I don't want the sculpt and I don't need the eyes, so let's move on to removing that. I'll be smoothing this out with epoxy later. It's looking pretty good, it's coming together nicely, and I'm making plans for what I'd like to do in the future. And here's more proof that customizing is terrifying. Moving on to aluminum foil, there's no point wasting a lot of expensive resources when we have aluminum foil on hand, and this one actually, I literally finished the roll. So I fill it with aluminum foil and then I top it up with hot glue. I'm not planning on baking this pony, obviously, because it would melt, so it's perfectly safe to use hot glue. Filling the head with rocks and glue as well, because I want that to also be heavy. I added a lot of additional weight to this pony. I actually should get the weight. So you can see here I've trimmed off the edges because I don't want the neck to be too sharp, so I can easily add epoxy sculpt, which I'm doing now. A lot of epoxy sculpt is added to this piece. It's done in many layers versus just filling in the gaps, the obvious gap I created, any holes I've added, covering up the areas in which were cut apart. That included like the eyes, eventually the neck, as you can see here, and now I'm moving on to bulking out the tummy. Now Santa is by no means a small being, so that's one of the reasons I actually chose this pony. Was it did have a lot of distance from its belly to its legs, so I'm actually able to build up the belly. I do have to add height to the pony, which I've signified with my beautiful hand motions earlier, to allow it to actually be tall enough to include that belly. If I didn't do that, his belly would literally be on the ground. Here I'm adding additional weight to his neck. I want him to look like a heavy set pony, so he's got chubby cheeks, he's got a larger neck, he's got thicker thighs. It's all intended to make it work here. Now I'm getting ready to actually add the extension to the feet. In order to do so, I do need to trim down the feet that are currently there, or they'll get way too bulky. So this will be thinner at the tip, and then I'll be able to bulk them back up again. Using cardboard, I'm able to quickly add the height without making it too expensive. Oh, glue strands. The adventures they bring. In order for me to extend 4 feet, I need to make 4 of these. So terrible camera angles is going to be a theme here. I have zero concept of where my camera was pointing for this whole video. I swear, I have no idea why, but yeah, I was so bad at that. However, I believe I made it work. I'm filling out the feet now and bulking them up, including the backs of the legs too. You want to give it girth everywhere. As mentioned before, this pony was heavy. Like, I'm talking real heavy. All the extra added rocks, the epoxy sculpt. I had to move on to something else, so I actually ended up buying this stuff called Hearty Clay. It's a lightweight air dry clay. I think it's actually paper clay. I've seen a review on it before on the internets. It is adding the extra weight I needed without adding epoxy sculpt. I mixed it with Mod Podge and actually covered it with Mod Podge even before it dried, and that gave it extra rigidity. Now it's time to trim up. I don't actually sand this pony. I just simply use my craft blade just to kind of comb off a lot of the top parts, because I am planning on covering this pony primarily in fabrics and other materials, so I don't need to worry about that. Ugh. Painting is lovely. This is actually really good paint. It really sucked that this was what happened, but whatever. I used some trash, got rid of it. No problems. Sorry, I'm moving on to painting the pony. I am adding these colors mainly as a guide. I know I had my reference there, but I wanted to actually have something like kind of more of a guide visually, just so I could plan out where his skin tone would be, where I'm planning on adding all the material. It kind of looks like he's wearing funny PJs right now, or long johns. It's actually really cute. Now here we're going to fly through some bad choices I made. You can see here this beautiful fabric I'm planning on using. I decide that I'm going to use aluminum foil to first create a pattern. Good intentions, but bad execution. Here, the aluminum foil just doesn't hold up. It would create a need for me to constantly fix it, and then I actually lose sight of what the pattern actually is supposed to look like, so that went in the trash. Then the next time I was like, well, that didn't work. Patterns suck. I'm just going to get lazy. So I'm just going to cut out a strip of my beautiful fabric, and I'm going to just glue it directly on the pony and then stretch it into place. This does not work. It never worked. I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea. I think it was late at night. I thought, perfect. I'm just going to be lazy and I'll have this done by morning. No, it actually created a lot more work for myself, so I did all the work. And then I ended up just having to literally rip it off. Literally ripping it off and taking all the paint with it. I don't fix up the paint, it's not that big a deal, but I was frustrated beyond measure. And then I just calmed down and breathed a little and moved on to back to patterns. Now I just used this using tape, much easier, and this is actually the pants without the legs, so I'm actually using the legs here. So now you can see what I actually did. I actually created the pattern using tape and then just taking a Sharpie and marking out where I wanted it to be cut. It's pretty simple, nothing too crazy, and then once it's ready to go, I just cut off the the lines where it would allow me to remove it easily and peel it away. So you can actually see in the top right my leg, and now it's moved to it's moving. Those pieces are the leg pieces, which actually match what I want to do. I cut out the pattern pieces using my fabric scissors, and actually I left a seam allowance on purpose because I want to actually hem it. Now, I'm by no means a seamstress, so a lot of everything you see here, everything you see me do is got with hot glue. Hot glue, hot glue, hot glue. Also, I did a lot of stuff off camera because filming this was really challenging, plus I have zero concept of where things should be filmed in this video for some odd reason. I am planning on fixing that very soon, but it should look good soon. Here we go, pants are done. They look pretty good. Look like velveteen pants, but they have some weird seams, but those will be covered with the jacket. Now I'm moving on to the actually best method of making a pattern. Covering your piece with cling film, which I've seen many artists do, and then taking tape and creating, like covering the cling film in a layer of tape so then it's easy to draw on, like I did previously. Now I could have just done direct tape like I did with the legs. The only problem is I didn't want to run the risk of leaving any residue of glue on my beautiful fabric, so it was much easier just to use the cling film. And much like leg pieces, I just have to cut it out. So this is actually the jacket without the sleeves, and I actually cut the sleeves off separately because it'll be easier. Here I am laying out the pieces so I can sketch them onto the fabric using my alcohol marker. I have laid out the sleeves as well separately and doing the same. And they're good to go. Now, I for some odd reason decided to line the jacket. Really, you never see this in the final product, but I know it's there. I do. I know it's there. It looks good. So like I did hemming, I do hem by chunks. It's a lot easier to get that nice curve. And now I got the sleeves on, and now to move on to the actual jacket portion. A lot of this was done off camera, like I said before. It was impossible for me to get this done in a way that looked good on camera, at least in my current setup. But here he looks like he's wearing satin PJs, and he's actually wearing gloves too, but they're green, and I don't like them, so that will change soon. Moving on to the boots. The boots are actually comprised of two pieces, one for the back and one for the toe. You can see here I'm painting actually faux leather black, so it would look pretty good, and also fixing those gloves I mentioned earlier. Gluing on the toes to make sure that those were good to go, but worrying about the back of the boots a little later. So just getting the toes on so they look good. Oh my gosh, I am a messy crafter. The back of the boots, I would have actually seen the inside of the fabric, so I just lined a nice edge of black so it would look good from any angle. Making the hat, I actually used a pattern using some leftover tissue paper? Yeah, tissue paper. And it took me 3 tries, but I got it. It looks pretty cute. It looks like a gnome. He looks like a gnome. I actually stuffed the hat at one point, and I was like, why isn't this working? It's because I stuffed the hat. It looked like a gnome hat. I just couldn't get it to look right. It's because I stuffed it. I'm glad I didn't glue that in. Here I am, expertly hemming once again with my hot glue. And putting the hat on. Now we're just going to pause for a quick sec here. Why all the hot glue? Well, hot glue is awesome and it's really easy to use. Is there a risk? Absolutely, but I am using high quality hot glue and also high heat. High heat does tend to work better than low heat hot glue and does last longer. Now, again, there is still a risk of using hot glue and there's much better methods, but this works for me right now, so hopefully you can forgive me. Thanks. And back to the show. Here I am working on the boots again. I'm actually adding rivets or eyelets to it, and I use a hammer and nail to get the holes in. Don't do this directly on your desk, even with a cutting mat. Ugh, it scared me. I do pull out a scrap piece of wood here and actually fix it up, so this is a better way to do it. By adding the Posca pen first, I was able to create a ring of gold, which looks really good, so it's a lot easier to make eyelets that way when they're that tiny. Here I'm pulling out some embroidery thread and feeding it through a giant needle so I can actually lace up the boots. I laced the boots slowly and very tediously. I'll tell you that it took many tries, but in the end of the day, I do actually manage to get it looking pretty good, and here they are. Now they're purposely loose so I can actually slip them over the foot and glue them into place as I'm doing now, again with hot glue, and I am going to I guess, like tighten the laces afterwards. This does take time and is impossible to show on camera, but they look really good when they're all done, and actually tie little bows. With my big chunky fingers, that was challenging. Now I need some soles. I'm adding a sole here, and yeah, I actually cut circles, but they're way too big on purpose. That's so I can actually trim them to fit the feet instead of the other way around. I figured that would be a better way to make sure that I have the right shape rather than trying to make it look perfect off the foot and then adding it. Here I am trimming it down to make perfect little boots. They look really cute. Here now I'm jumping to the next phase, which is the beard hair, which I actually don't use for a good long while, I'm not gonna lie, but I get it prepped because I was waiting for drying and I figured why not. So here I am separating all the strands, and this will allow me to easily comb it with a pet brush. While this does look like a lot, it actually isn't much. I end up having to make more, but it looks fabulous. It's quite fluffy. You'll see me flatten that later, but it works really well and I save it for later. Here I am actually cutting out some fur fabric. I actually got this from the dollar store, I think 3 years ago, and it was actually made as Santa like fur for crafting there. It was a little too fluffy for me, so I had to trim it down, but it actually worked really, really well for this project. So, you know, buying randomly for the win. I'm actually bulking out the fluff on the front of the pony just to make it look like he's got like the 2 separate halves of his jacket, and you can like open them up. We can't, but you know, the idea is there. And then I actually work on his hat as well. I do multiple layers of the hat actually because it looked really funny with just one pass. It looked like he was wearing like weird bangs. But yeah, now here, oh, I'm finally flattening that. Yay! And moving on to the head. I've covered the pony in cling film and tape just to make sure that no like pastel dust or anything like that gets on my pony. I don't want the white to be less white. So here's the face is kind of sketched on. One thing I noticed when making this pony is I really want to avoid making him look angry. It was really hard because of the angles. I kept having to do that. I was trying to think of like big bright eyes, kind of like if you've ever seen Rise of the Guardians. Santa mentions his core and he shows this like baby with big blue eyes. That's kind of what I was like inspired by. You can see me making Santa's belt. This is one of the few pieces that is removable, as well as the hat. This is actually made from a buckle that I recycled from an old purse. Here I am making the strap. I first painted black and then followed by gold, so it'll look closer to the buckle. Nailed it. Doing the rivet tactic on the belt as well, but this time I use a piece of wood right away so I don't nail it into my poor desk. So now the pony's been covered with matte clear varnish, which is great, and it is ready for painting. Now you're wondering, why did I go through all the trouble of drawing it out with like watercolor pencils when I was just planning on covering with paint? That is a good question. And honestly, it's just to get the idea of what you want it to look like down. Some people use watercolor pencils amazingly well. Like they're just artists in their own right with that kind of stuff. Me, I use it mainly just to get an idea down, sometimes add additional details, but with this kind of drawn out ahead of time, I'm able to establish the look I wanted, which again, going back to the idea of the angry eyes, it would have been a problem if I would have started with paint. Really want those big, bright blue eyes. I always imagine Santa with big, bright blue eyes. It takes a few different layers of different colors to make it look the way I want it, but I get it there. That angle, he looks angry. See? It's really hard. Outlining it in black and adding gray to make the eyes look a little bit more like they have depth, and adding some sparkle and shine. It is necessary for Santa to have sparkle and shine, so I use some dragonfly glaze. Oh my gosh. Looks awesome. Now I'm using, I actually use glitter here. For the eye shines, I actually use glitter instead of white paint because I really wanted to sparkle. I wanted to show like there's magic there. So he looks like he's really like filled with wonder and glee. Now we're moving on to the beard. I actually use Elmer's Glue All, which is really great. It goes down nicely. It has more working time, so you're actually able to adjust the fibers. You can actually comb them out a little bit with using like a silicone tool here. It also dries completely clear, unlike hot glue. And here he is. I didn't quite get the proper shot beforehand, so enjoy the still. Here I'm making his glasses. I actually use wire, and I tried to use my UV resin, but there's something actually wrong with the UV resin. It doesn't actually cure. So I end up using different things, but they look awesome. And now with everything, he is actually done. Like, he's done. It took forever, but he is amazing. So look forward to the glamour shots. Coming into this project, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I knew Santa had to look a specific way. The big, long, flowing white beard, the big blue eyes, the satin suit. It was so particular. I think I put a lot of effort into finding the right, or sourcing the right materials to make sure I got the right look. And it couldn't just be done with any pony. It had to be done with a very specific pony so I could get the right aesthetic. Honestly, it matches really perfectly with my Rudolph pony I made last year. I'm so glad I was able to pull this together, and it's just in time for the holidays. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you like the content I'm making. I hope you like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I hope you have a very happy holiday season. Bye.